some reason, I'm not seeing the live pulled up on Facebook yet, but you never know with Facebook. I might pop over to YouTube and see what's going on over there. Technical difficulties. It's the name of the game, right? Oop, okay, great. We are live over. Yay. Okay. I see it's over here. That's great. Okay. Just bear with me while we get all the stuff ironed out. Okay, so hopefully we show up on Facebook soon. Maybe we are now and it just wasn't pulling up on my account. But I'm Ajaire. I'm a Cuddle Ambassador. And we'll give like a couple more minutes now that hopefully everything's live to make sure that everything's going to go smoothly today. We're going to make my Daybreak Belt Bag pattern today, which is really exciting. It's so fun and cuddle, and I can't wait to show them to you. So I'm going to take this off so that doesn't flash in my face. Let me just see Jackie out there, which is great. Thanks, Jackie. You're always such a big help over on YouTube. I am going to peek one more time over at Facebook just to see. And then we've got, I want to try to get through the whole bag today. So don't want to waste too much time. Oh, I think we're live on Facebook too. Yay. Okay. Yay. All right. Well, I think, see if I can pull up the comments on Facebook just so I can see them. Of course, they make it different every single time I'm on here. Let's see. Pop that up. I always say it's not live if it doesn't go haywire at some point, right? Huh. Let's see what happens when they do this. Oh, there we go. Okay. Think that's going to work for us. Okay. So let's get started. Today we're going to make my Daybreak Belt Bag pattern. It's over on Designs by Cuddle Ajaire. You can get it from the website cuddleajaire.com, and it looks like this. It's a cute little belt bag that you can wear, you know, like across the body, or you can wear it with the buckle. You can undo the buckle and you can wear it around your waist too. So you could wear it either way. This one I made quite a while ago, and you can tell it's been like petted and petted and petted because I wear it all the time. But the good thing about Cuddle is that I emptied it out today so I could show you guys, and I can wash it tonight and it's going to like puff right back up and be great. So we have a few different ones I want to show you, but the brand of another Cuddle ambassador, Sheila Ryan, who you guys know, she was kind enough to embroider for me because I do not have an embroidery machine. Do a lot of things, but have not jumped into embroidery, though Sheila has me about this close to getting machine. But anyway, so she embroidered a couple of really cute, the collegiate letters are so trendy right now for the front of the bag. So she sent me one of those, and then I sewed up with a fun color on the inside. And I just wanted to show you guys to see what it would look like in a C3, like that lower pile cuddle with something fun on the front. I'm going to switch to the overhead camera real quick so you can see a little better. Like it really is a nice spot where you can feature something on the front of it because it is just a solid front. So first we start with the pattern pieces, and this is a PDF pattern. So it's one of those where you print the pages and then cut them all out. But the nice thing about this pattern is that the pages are, the pattern pieces mostly fit on the page themselves, which is so nice. So you don't have a lot of taping to do. The first two pages, you just cut out the pieces, and the only thing you need to tape together are just the pages for the longer patterns, the longer pattern pieces like the gusset. So really, it's just 2 pages that you would cut along the solid line and then tape it together using the symbols to tape together, and then you've got all your pieces. So some PDF patterns and even some PDF patterns that I sell in my shop have many, many, many pages in order to fit them all, but they do come with the overhead projector view. So if you want to just project the pattern pieces onto the fabric, that's another great way to do it. But I'm going to show you how we cut out the pieces. Actually, let's go over the ingredients first. I think we have an ingredients list of what we need for this pattern. So we're going to need some Cuddle, of course. For the one I'm going to sew with you guys today, I'm using really, really lovely the Frosted Oceana. I love that it has like those little ridges on it. It's fun to pet, but it also gives it a little bit of extra fun in there. I'm also using C3 in Snow for the inside, for the lining. So I like using for the linings the C3 because it's a little bit thinner pile, and so it makes everything going together real nice. But I like having the washability, the durability, and the softness inside the bag too. So you could use a different fabric, but I like to stick with the Cuddles. Adrienne, do you have the list of what goes in it that can pop up on the screen? I'm not sure if you have that available. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So we are going to use, I use Pellin SF101. I cut out the pieces, and then, so like this is the shape of the upper zipper pocket. I cut out the Pellin shapes as well, and then I do press them on there. And we're not going to press the Pellin on today. I am going to do a little bit of pressing later to show you, but we did that in the coat video that I did for you guys a few months ago. I showed you how I press, and all I do for the Pellin is I'll put it on. I'll change back to this camera real quick so you can see. But I would put, even for these puffier pieces, it worked really well to put the interfacing on there. So I would, this one already has it on there, but let's say I'm one of those top pieces. All right, so like I said, this is that upper zipper pocket piece. So let's say this is the backing of the piece. Then you would just take it's a iron-on interfacing. So you put it with the little, you can feel it on there, the little beads of glue, put them on there. And then you would press. I use a pressing cloth just because I don't want any of that glue if it does seep out the sides to get on my iron, but also just protects the fabric a little bit more. And all this is I just cut up, sort of some old sheets or whatever, and use them, just cotton. And so I press really well, and I'm not sliding it around. I'll spray it with my spray bottle. I've got a little spray bottle down here that I'll wet it really well. No steam or anything in the actual iron. I just press, press, press. So as long as you're not really pushing down super hard, I use the high end of the silk setting on my iron. So it's not super, super hot, but it's enough that melts and it'll stick together onto the piece. And I do that for the C3. I do it for, like I said, I did it for this as well. You can see it stayed really nice on top. You still have all those same ridges that you had. So it didn't do any damage to the fabric, but you just want to be gentle. And there's so many different types of Luxe Cuddles out there that if you are pressing, interfacing onto one of the Luxe Cuddles, you're going to want to just double check that, like test a piece with your specific iron settings, that it's going to be okay. But I've found that they stand up really well to the pressing. Okay, so if we can go back to the list, I took a little detour there, but I can tell you the rest of the stuff we're going to need. Obviously, we need the pattern, which we talked about. Oh, and don't forget to share the post today, this live, because we're going to have 2 winners from today and one who shared yesterday, and they're going to win a yard of Cuddle, which is very exciting, and then one of my patterns, so the Daybreak Belt Bag pattern. And then for any of you guys that are watching, if you use the code Shannon at checkout on my site, and we'll post the link later, all the patterns I put 20% off till the end of April using that code. So you can get any of the patterns from the shop, and the Daybreak Belt Bag is in there. But I'm excited that you guys are going to get that 1 yard of Cuddle if you win the giveaway today for sharing. So don't forget to share. But back to the ingredients, we have the pattern piece that we already talked about. We cut out. We always use the polyester thread in the sewing machine. I have 2 different zippers. So the outside of the bag I usually on the outside of the bag like to use a number 5 zipper. It's a little bit thicker. You can use a number 3. And I'll show you the difference real quick. And it's just personal preference. In this one, this is a number 5, and it's just a little bit thicker and sturdier. And the actual zipper pull is a little bit wider. It's a 5mm. And then this is the 3. So it's thinner. It still works just fine, but it's just the zipper pull is just smaller. So it's personal preference, but either one will work fine. I prefer to do the 5 on the outside. And then if you do an inside zipper pocket like this one, that I tend to like to do a 3 inside of there. But you could do a 5 inside of there too. So it just depends on the size. So you will need 2 zippers if you're going to do that inside zipper pocket. And we could talk about, I like to use zipper length, so get yardage of zippers and then add a zipper pull, but you can do it either way with either a fully formed zipper and cut it down, or you can make your own with the zipper yardage. So we can talk about that in a little bit. We use Wash Away Wonder tape for holding the zipper down. You will need webbing. I like to use like the kind that looks like a seatbelt, like this one. But you can use any kind of webbing. That's for the strap. So you'll need at least a yard of that. I can't remember exactly what it says in the pattern. I like to cut mine at about 60 inches. So almost 2 yards. And then we have it so that it is adjustable. So it doesn't hang down. You use that if you make it much smaller for yourself. It's not flopping around, it's contained within itself. So that's how we put that on. So it doesn't have to be exact. I think the pattern says get up to 4 yards just to be sure, but really I think you can do it with about 2 yards. The pattern also has 3 different sizes of bags in there. There's small, medium, and large. This is the large. I think it works best for Cuddle because, when you're flipping the whole thing back to right side out, it can be a little tricky with the thicker Cuddles. So I like to do the large for this, but the small is really cute. My kindergartner has a little crossbody bag out of the small that she uses, which is cute. Okay, so we also have the 9014 stretch needle. We always have that when we're working with Cuddle. So the needle in our machine. I always say walking foot as well, but today I am going to be using a zipper foot. So my machine doesn't allow me to use a walking foot and a zipper at the same time, zipper foot. So I'm not going to be using the walking foot for most of it. If it gets real tricky, I might swap them. But if you do have a zipper foot, that helps with some of these zipper applications. You will also need a buckle and little, the fastener here, I can't think of the word for it, but it's the other part of the buckle that it'll go through. And you can pick these up. Most of your local quilt shops will have them. If not, some of those online marketplaces certainly have them. Trying to remember any other ingredients that I'm forgetting. Obviously, we've got things like our clover, flathead pins that we love, all the standard things we use for working with Cuddle. But I think I'm going to jump now to actually starting the project. All right, so I cut all my pieces out already, but I'm going to switch the overhead camera and I will show you how I did cut. All right, so this is that. Now I just want to cuddle with this, but this is that frosted Oceana. It's really so pretty. And you can see here where I cut the pieces out. So most of the time with this bag, you don't have to have you don't have to have all the pile hanging over the edge because there's a seam allowance and that'll end up getting kind of tucked in there anyway. There's a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with this project. So you could just use a rotary cutter and, you know, end up with the mess and you have to vacuum it all up. For this one, I did use for the Luxe, I did use the SF101 blade that we like to use. And it just makes it so much cleaner cuts. And then you've got that pile overhang if you want it later. So with this project, it's really up to you how you want to cut. It's sort of your favorite way to cut. Some projects we say, no, you definitely have to do it this way. If you're doing a fold over binding, you want to be able to have the edge there. So you want to make sure you use the knife because you don't want to lose any of that pile. But a project like this, that's mostly just going to end up getting tucked inside. And honestly, probably just causing more bulk for us. So you don't really need it. I just like to do less mess. So I used mine anyway. But you'll cut out all the pieces, all the SF101, and you're going to fuse all those together. I've already done that part. That's really clear in the pattern, and we've done that in other videos, so I don't think that's super important to show you today. So what I am going to do, I'm going to pull up the pattern on my phone. The nice thing about these patterns is that you can just view them on like an iPad or a phone. You don't have to print out the whole pattern, all the pattern pages, just the pages for the pieces. So I am going to pull this up here because I don't want to miss any steps for you guys. And there are a couple places where there's some numbers and stuff that I don't want to be off on. But we'll start with the zipper, the main outside zipper. We're going to start there and we attach it to the pieces that are called the zipper gusset. And those are pieces that look like this, and they're basically going to go on either side of that zipper and kind of hold it in place. So I'm going to get my lining to zipper gussets and my main fabric to zipper gussets. And if you're just joining us, we're going to be sewing the Daybreak Belt Bag today. And I've lost my other lining gusset. Let's see, it's got to be here. And don't forget to share the live. Let's see, that's that. All right. Well, I have it. Let me look real quick, and if I can't find it, we'll just cut a new one. So that's what we do. Oh, here it is back here. There we go. Sorry if my microphone did weird things while I just attacked this light back here. All right. There we go. All right, we're going to put the two lining pieces to the side just for right now. And we're going to focus on the main pieces. Show you what that looks like over here. Just move this a little bit. Just like a little brighter there. Okay. So these are the two pieces we're working with right now. And on the pattern piece themselves, there's a little notch. And that notch is going to later match up with the top edge of the main piece. So I like to cut that notch out of the SF101. And on something like this Luxe, I did mark it with a Sharpie. So that's totally up to you. On the two pieces that I did for the lining, I just clipped into the cuddle itself and made a notch. It's really your preference, just as long as you can know where that notch is going to be, because we'll need that later. For now, we're going to take these pieces, and on the non-notched edge, we're going to get our zipper going. So I am using this zipper here. So I'm going to use this piece of zipper. It's just it was like a long, this long chain of zipper length here that I have just cut a piece off. And the instructions tell you how much. I think it was 13 inches. Yeah, about 13 inches. If you're going to use, you're using a zipper that's already been built, like this one, you would just, it doesn't have to be exact size. You just want to kind of center it, and you don't have to worry about the zipper pull or anything right now. For this one that I'm building, I'm not even going to add the zipper pull yet because it just gets in the way. So I like this Oceana to kind of be like this, going away from me as you open the bag. And so I made sure the notch that's going to attach to the main part of the bag was on that side of the fabric. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some wash away Wonder Tape on the edge of the zipper, and then we're going to line it up to the edge of that. And because the zipper is a little bit longer, it doesn't have to be exact. We just want to make sure it's going to fit on there. So let's get started with that. This stuff is awesome. It's really helps to hold everything in place so nicely. And then it does just wash right away. It doesn't gum up your needle or anything like that. I kind of worried about that at first, but I've never had an issue with it. I use it for almost every zipper application, whether it's jeans or working with Cuddle. Now with Cuddle, especially a luxe like this Oceana, it's not perfect because it's going to stick to the fibers, and those fibers are going to want to float back and forth and all that. So it's not perfect, but it definitely still helps to have this there. You can use pins as well. So I'm trying to get this meshed up. Just trying to show you. I'm wanting the edge of the fabric. So the SF101 is a little bit shorter, but that's okay. I'm going to the edge of the fabric and the edge of the zipper. I'm not wanting, it can be confusing where that edge is there on these thicker pieces. And so you want to just really line it up, and that's helping it to stick. We may add some pins because, like I said, it is that fluffier fabric, but I want to get it in place just to start. And Adriana's helping me out today with things like comments and stuff. So we'll see. I may miss some of that stuff. If I see it, I will definitely chime in. All right. So I am going to add a few pins. For this, I'm really just trying to keep things in place. So I'm not doing a ton of double pinning or anything like that. I'm really, that Wash Away Wonder Tape is helping to kind of keep it there, but I'm not going to worry too much about making it super solid. So let's go over to the machine, and I need to thread real quick. Forgot to thread. It's in there. I just didn't finish threading. So thread again. This is the polyester thread. We use polyester thread for Cuddle so that it matches the polyester fabric, and it's not going to snap the stitches or anything like a cotton might snap as you're trying to put everything together. Or sorry, if you're pulling it. And something like this where you're going to kind of be wearing it, it's going to get tugged. I mean, how many of us have a super neat and clean, perfect purse that we carry around? This thing's probably going to go through the ringer. So you want to make sure your stitches are not going to pop. All right, so I'm using a straight stitch. This is a Janome that I've had for 100 years. It's a pretty good machine. I'm going to bump the stitch length up to 3 millimeters. Your machine may want you to go higher than that. I am using a zipper foot. For this step, you don't really have to because you're just going to try to get close to that zipper. I do the 3/8 of an inch that's in the pattern, and that gets you pretty close, or close enough for this project. But if you're using the zipper foot, you do get a little bit closer. So at some point, you're probably going to need to put the zipper foot on. So I just like to have it on from the beginning here. All right, so I use this is the Bienni stiletto that we love to use to kind of keep everything in place. And I'm going to start the stitches, and then I will back stitch a little bit. I start and I back stitch. And because I'm not using a walking foot, I really am going to have to use this to guide the fabric. It's going to want to shift because I'm not having that action with the foot that I normally will. The Janome, I think, does the what's it called? AccuFeed, I think. It's the one that pops down, and it just is like a lifesaver with Cuddle, but I can't get it to work with my zipper foot. So fortunately, this is not there's no super lengthy seams in this project, so if things shift around, it's not really the end of the world with this one. Although if you've watched most of my videos, you'll see that I kind of don't worry. Never the end of the world. I just We'll figure it out. Nothing has to be exact. Now, if you're quilting, things have to be exact. Most of the time with clothing and with something like this bag, the seams don't have to be absolutely perfect, which is what's so nice about working with Cuddle. All right, I'm going to take this back to the other view real quick just to show you what that looks like. This one, of course, just popped off. There we go. So you can see this all in place now. And because whether or not my seam was perfectly straight, it doesn't super matter because this fabric is so fluffy and lush that you wouldn't notice it anyway. And actually, that's a good reminder. I was going to turn my my iron on. I like to keep it off when I'm not using it. I have one of those plugs that you can turn the actual plug on and off, and I like to do that because I'm always afraid I'm going to forget to turn the iron off. So I just turn the whole plug off. All right, so that's back on. Then I got my pattern up just in case I need that. Okay, so this is the piece that we have. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the lining. So how we do that is we flip this back down. So this is just what we stitched on. And I like to just make sure that nothing got like super puckered or anything in there. Everything looks nice. And then we're going to sandwich the lining on top. So for that, you want to make sure your notch is not, you're doing the non-notch side just like this one. So I kind of line them up where I see that notch there, and then I see the notch on the top one, and I kind of line them up that way because again, this zipper, the actual location where everything is, doesn't have to be perfectly centered yet at this point. There's some play here, but I just try to get it about where it should be. And I'm not going to use the Wonder Tape here, but you certainly could. That could keep it in place. But I'm just pinning in the direction that I'm going to sew. I'm going to take the pins out as I go, and I'm pinning from the top because I'm going to want to stitch right along that same stitch that we already used to put the main fabric on. So you can see I'm stitching on the main fabric through the zipper, through the lining. So I'm doing all 3 layers at once. And I'm going to stitch right along those same lines again. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Just going to try to get it lined up. Go. Just do a couple stitches. Again, need the stiletto to just kind of make sure everything's going to guide through nicely. And if you don't hit exactly over the stitching, it's okay. You want to get as close as you can. But it's not going to do any huge damage if you don't have it exactly. Just going to click. I'm not sure if that's focusing very well on one camera there. So let's just see. All right. Okay, so we got that stitched. Let's go back over here. Click that stitching. Okay, so got the main fabric that we already had stitched, and now we have also the lining fabric, that's snow. So you see the zipper there, the lining's underneath, and the main fabric's there. Oh, someone asked where I got the Wash Away Wonder Tape. You can get that in any quilt store. They generally have it. I want to say it's a Dritz product, and I think it was in the ingredients, the actual maker. But there are different ones. This one I actually purchased through Wawak. You can purchase online. I'm in Maryland, and so they're like 2nd day shipping. I mean, it comes so fast. It's like every time I think it's not going to arrive. It gets here within a day. It's shocking to me. So I ran out of the regular wash away wonder tape that I had, and I was in a pinch. So I got that from a walk, and it's worked great. I've been really happy with it. I would definitely use it again. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my pad really quick because I don't want to put this iron down on my mat because it will leave a mark, or it'll, bend it. Let's see where my pad is. It's fine on this, obviously, but I don't want to. Maybe I'll just hold it up because I don't know where that pad went. Basically, I want to press down. This will do. Just kind of shove it on that for a second. All right. I want to press this down so that it's going to stay in place pretty well. You do not have to do this part, but it really will make top stitching in place much easier. You can kind of do it with your hands, but I did it with my hands when I was making one of the step outs, and I just didn't love how it turned out. So I just decided I'm going to do the actual pressing. So this is an Aliso iron. They're a great company too. Like I said, I've got a lower setting. I like to do that. And then I use a tailor's clapper on top. Kind of just add a little steam there. I know everybody says don't use steam with Cuddle. I've never had a problem with it, so I do a little bit of it. But if you've had problems, then let me know. So now that kind of wants to stay in place. So that's good enough. We did not need to do much there. It wasn't, a big pressing section. I just like to do that little bit so that everything really will stay in place. Okay, so now I'm going to leave the iron here because we're going to press the other side. So now we've got the other pieces that we're going to attach there. And it'll look like the zipper's going to get lost because everything's so fuzzy, but it'll be fine. Trust me, it'll work. So again, we've got the notch edge, which is not the side that we're going to line up. Let me move this out of the way because it's the camera's trying to focus on it. There we go. Hello. Yeah, that's better. So you're going to stitch not the notch edge. We're going to stitch this edge here to this. So we're basically going to stitch it like that. And I am going to use that wash away tape again. I suppose I shouldn't call this one wash away wonder tape because it is that will walk product, but it's the same thing. All right, so you just put that on the edge. Press it down and sometimes like if I'm using a C3 and I'm concerned about it sticking, I'll even press before I stitch. So really like press where I almost like get the wonder tape to like fuse to it. It still washes away just fine, but that gives an extra little stickiness. But I'm not gonna bother doing it in this case because the longer pile of this luxe, things want to shift around kind of anyway, even if I did that. So it's just not worth taking that extra step. All right, so that's pressed in place. We'll just put a couple pins to make sure, since we're live on camera, don't want to go all haywire. All right, so I'm going to go back to the machine and we'll stitch this in place. There we go. All right. Need my stiletto. And remember that the tape is holding everything mostly in place. The pins are just making sure nothing really goes crazy under there. And you can kind of feel anyway what's happening underneath. Sticking there nice. All right, we're almost done. We're just going to add that lining onto this And then that zipper part is pretty much over with. So if you're afraid of zippers, it sounds like there's a lot of zipper action in this, but it really is not too bad. Okay, so we got that. So now we're going to add the lining underneath. So to do that, we're going to sandwich it again. So the lining piece, let's pop over to here. All right, so we're adding this lining piece. Remember, you don't want to do the notched edge, you're doing the other edge. And we're going to sandwich that zipper. So what I like to do is this lining piece that's already attached is going to line up kind of with this one here. And then I'm flipping the whole thing over because remember, I want to stitch from the front. So someone was asking if the zipper teeth were going to get caught. And I'll show you at the end. It looks like it's going to be a nightmare and the pile is going to get caught every time. But the nice thing is if you've kind of let gravity work itself in this circumstance, the fibers want to push away from the zipper. So they hang down. Remember I was saying that I wanted it to be like this and like this when you're petting it. So that's why those Oceania things are going that way. They're naturally going out of the way of the zipper. And in the next step, we are going to just do a quick little top stitch. But even without the top stitch, it looks like it's all going to get caught up in there, but it really doesn't. Now, the only time it does get caught is if you, and I kind of demonstrate it once this is put together, if you are pinching at it or kind of hold it in a certain way while you're unzipping it, then it can cause problems. But once you kind of have a feel for how to use it, it's fine. And on the C3, there's no issue at all. I mean, it doesn't not even long enough to get caught. But that was a concern of mine when I made my first one with the longer pile, but it really is shocking how the gravity does just kind of pull it around or lets it fall out of the way as you're zipping it, if that makes sense. I even made one out of the Luxe Dreamy fabric with that super long, silky, soft pile. And it was so funny because it was just like a big, fluffy poof ball purse. And I was so worried that it was just going to be a nightmare for anybody trying to unzip it. And when I finished it, I kept zipping and unzipping, zipping and unzipping, and it was totally fine. Those fibers just wanted to fall right into place. So it wasn't an issue. But I can see why it would be a concern. All right, switch back to this. Okay, so now that piece is done too, and I'm just going to press just like I did before, and I kind of pull a little bit because we're wanting to force that into position. And you could use a seam roller or something. I've done that before too, but I don't love the way it works. I feel like the pressing is just so much faster that it worked well for me. It was worth me getting out the iron and getting it all set up for you guys to see. So just push that down. I'm also making sure that the pile is going in the right direction underneath. So I'm not pressing it the wrong direction. I'm not taking and trying to make a different shape out of it or something, if that makes sense. So I'm not forcing that fabric. You do have to be careful. Some of the C3s, like some of the things are embossed like in a way that if you press too hard, you might take that embossing out. Like that could be a risk. I'm not worried with these fabrics at all because that's not the case. And you can see it's not, like it still keeps those lines, but that's the only worry there. And again, I would just take whatever fabric you're planning to use and do a test run to make sure it's going to press well. Slide that out of the way. All right. So there we have our finished zipper piece. I think this is where I'm going to attach the zipper, but let me just double check. Yep, this is where I'm going to add zipper pull. First, I'm going to top stitch. You don't have to top stitch. You could go without it, but I mostly like to keep the lining in place. So we're stitching those 2 layers together. So I'm going to do that really quick. I'm going to bump it up to a 4mm. I am going to do that because it just holds everything in place so much nicer. And if we do have any worries about potentially catching the pile in the zipper, that kind of helps with that too. I'm going to actually do it from this side. So let's see if you can see what I'm doing. So I'm kind of centering the other side of the zipper. So this side of the zipper with the edge of this zipper foot. So I'm going to be stitching along here on this side. And I can feel with my fingers that the lining is underneath and it's pushed in the right direction. That's part of how we were pressing just before to make sure that it was going to be in a good spot. And then it's really hard to see what is happening through all this fluff, but I'm trying to, with the stiletto, kind of part the C's here. Make sure these ones are going that way and these ones are going that way. Just don't want to catch anything going the wrong direction. That makes sense. And this is not going to totally hold the fibers in place. So if you don't do it, it's really not the end of the world. Like I said, I mostly want kind of that lining to behave underneath. That's more what I'm trying to do. So I'm not trying to stitch down every one of these fibers, because I've definitely made them where I did not top stitch and I still did not have an issue with closing up the zipper. So just so you know, I haven't put on that zipper pull yet because I want to get this top stitching done first, where I don't have to worry about the bulkiness of the zipper pull. But that's going to be my next step after this. All right, and then I'm just going to go on the other side and do the other one. Do it the exact same way, but just on the other side. Again, just kind of parting the C's, like I said. It's kind of a funny way to put it, but that will help. It will help, but the gravity seems to be what helps the most with keeping the fibers out of the way of the zipper. The main thing I'm trying to do is make sure that this side's fibers don't get caught on that side. That's just because that would be a problem with the zipper. So just kind of keeping it separate here. Double checking that the lining side's all good. All right, here we go. Okay. Right, pop that off. Switch over here. All right. Saw that there was another online question, but it was about the floof getting caught in the zipper. So I've already answered that one. Might be a different question. But nope, it doesn't get caught in there. So I just try to make sure that I didn't catch, like I said, I don't want to catch this fiber on this side. So that's what I'm trying to make sure I didn't do when I top stitched it just there. Make sure that, and then you should be in the clear. All right, so now I'm going to add the zipper pull, which is always really fun. I'm never really quite sure it's going to work the way I want it to. So there's lots of tutorials about adding a zipper pull. I'm not the best at it, so I just kind of finagle it. I try to make sure that I don't undo too much of the zipper so I can kind of keep control over it. And I just sort of try to jam it in there. They have tools for this, but I also don't love using the tool. Felt like it got in my way more than it helped. But it may just be one of those things where you need to practice using the tool, and then all of a sudden it's changed your life and it's the best thing ever. So let me just try to jam this in there. It's just the getting started part is always a little tricky. And it's where you need that third hand that we all wish we had. All right, so that's in there. All right, so I'm not going to go off the other end there. The number of times where I've zipped it and then just unzipped it right there is embarrassing, so I'm not even going to tell you how many times. Okay, so this is all set to go. I am going to zigzag the zippers at each end to make sure it's nice and snug and that I don't accidentally unzip it all the way and lose the zipper pull. So I'll do that from this side, measure where that's going to be, and then do it up here. I just want to make sure I keep that together there. Don't have my regular foot on, so I think I'm just going to, instead of zigzag, I'm just going to stitch over it. But normally I would zigzag it in place. I'm just going to stitch over it. You have to be careful. This is a metal zipper, so it's a little treacherous to stitch across it like that, but I have extra needles. If I broke one, I could always throw another one on. And then I'm going to do this end. This is just, you only really have to do this part if you are either shortening a zipper or if you're using that zipper yardage like I did. If you have a zipper that's the right size, it'll already have a zipper stop on both ends, so you don't need to worry about it. But I like to have the zipper yardage because I do a lot of bags and I do a lot of clothing. And so it's helpful to have all that yardage at your disposal, and you can kind of mix and match fun little things. But so you can see so far, I'm not having any issues with that pile getting caught in there. I think the only times when we had trouble was like if you were holding the bag. Well, see what was happening. If I was holding it, maybe there was an issue where we were trying to mimic it when I was at the Shannon Fabrics office. And it was like if I held it down or something. But if you just naturally let it go, it's totally fine. So that's exciting. All right, we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're adding the gusset. So that's going to end up being like the bottom of the bag. So it's going to end up going kind of like that and making the bag shape. So we're basically attaching this to this bottom. This piece is has notches on both sides, and it's technically like a reversible piece, but in this pattern you kind of can decide which way you want the Oceana to go. If you're, and the same if you had a C3, you would check the pile of which way you want to go, but it really doesn't matter because it is just this piece that's going to go around the edge of the bag, and so it's going to be the wrong direction at some point. So it's not super important to know that. And the finished size of this one, someone's asking, is let me just measure it because I'm on my table right now. So the finished size of this one is about 10 inches in this direction, and then about 7, maybe a little less than 7 in this direction. And I think it's like 3 inches wide. Yeah, about 3 inches, or like this way. And like I said, there's 3 different bag sizes. So there's a cute little small one, and I cannot remember. The finished sizes are in the pattern, but there's a small and then a medium. But this is a nice size for what we're doing here. So now the reason I have this out is because you want to decide how you want your zipper pull to go. I'm going to go back up to this camera. So let's say I'm wearing this. I shortened it like a ton when I was doing the thing earlier, so you wouldn't wear it up around your neck like this, but I just want to show you. So do you want yours unzipped like this or unzipped like this? Oops, I'm kind of probably making the sound crazy. I have this one like this, and I don't love it that way. I want it to unzip this way because I'm right-handed, so that if that was unzipping, I feel like it would be a lot easier than this being the unzipping. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever your preference is, but I'm going to try to make it so that it unzips this way. So when we're doing that, we're going to take into account, oops, wrong one. We're going to take that into account when we're trying to figure out which direction we want this pile to go. So this, I want to be like that. So it unzips from there. And so this is now going to go on the bottom. Now, do I want that pile facing this way toward the front, or this way. I kind of want it going that way, but really it's totally up to you. But that's just one way you can kind of try to visualize what you're doing. So I am going to match them up like that. And we're going to match them up um, both sides together. So we're going to go through all the layers. We're just not going to stitch all the way to the edges so that we can sew everything together later. And this bag does have a lining, as I've mentioned. And Sheila Ryan, one of the other ambassadors, has made this bag a few times. She's done some really, really fun, cute things with it because, like I said, the front is a good spot for embroidery or things like that. And so she has done it without a lining a few times, and so or done it with a lining but just serged it together. So instead of making it like we're going to birth this bag, we're doing a lining and the outside, and then you put them together. So that's another way you can do it. She just serged the edges on the inside, and it looks cute and nicely finished. It doesn't look sloppy or anything like that. And so that's just another way that you could do it. Okay, so what we're wanting to do though is we want to make sure we stop and start at least 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, because later we're going to have to sew this edge to the front of the back of the bag. So I like to start a little more than a 3/8 of an inch off, especially with Cuddle. It can kind of hide, and those seams can be joined later. But we're just going to sew this part right here. And again, this is the combined zipper section with the main fabric gusset. I'm going to stitch across there. And I'm just going to stitch with my my walking foot again. Instead of trying to take it off and move all that around, I'm just going to use it. So it's a little bit tricky because it's a bit of a thickness here. And I'm stitching over the zipper. Just go straight across the zipper. You just want to make sure your zipper pull's not there. Make sure that's not in the way, but mine's not. Mine's on the other side anyway. And then we're going to back stitch again, like just about 3/8 of an inch. All right, so trim that up. And now, just like we did, so now that's attached there, but we want to get the lining. There's a lining gusset. So we want to get that in there too. So just like we did before, we're going to stitch and sandwich the whole thing in between. So this is the main gusset. This is the lining gusset. We're going to match those up. And then again, we're going to stitch right on the stitching we already did so we can see exactly where we stitched for the main. I like to do it that way because to me, the lining is less important since we're not going to see it exactly. It's like inside and you don't see all those details constantly. But with the main, that's going to be right in your face all the time. So I like to stitch from the main side if I can, because that's going to be the part most of us are seeing. Just kind of, this is all pretty tightly in place anyway, but I just pin that to make sure it's going to stick together. All right. So I'm going to start exactly where I started before, which was about a little more than 3/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm stitching right over those same stitches and ending in the same spot, back stitching. Okay. All right. So now we have main and the zipper, and then lining, zipper, and lining inside. So now we're going to attach this side. So we're going to do the main the same way we did before. And you can see here that the zipper is a little bit longer, but I'm going to line it up. You also see how that lining isn't exactly matched up to that main, and this lining, it doesn't quite pull over all exactly the same way. It's totally fine. We're going to kind of manipulate it into place. I'm not super concerned about it. The main and the main are what are my biggest concerns. And because it's such a fluffy luxe cuddle, none of it's really going to matter in the end anyway, because everything's just going to look cute and hidden. Like all our mistakes or little flubs are just going to all be hidden anyway. So I'm not too worried about it. That's what I always love about Cuddle is it hides all of our little tiny mistakes, right? Okay, just trying to get that into place. Sorry, I don't know if that was not focusing very well there, but I've got my main gusset. So that's the other side of the gusset. Now I've made a loop. I'm going to stitch that in place. And then while I'm over there, I'm going to sandwich this down and stitch over. You'll see over there. I'm not going to bother coming back to this camera for that because it's the same thing. So we're going to stitch this gusset down, stopping and starting the 3/8 of an inch away, just about there. Oh, and we're using that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance too. I don't know if that was clear. Just sticking with that. It's pretty much that throughout the whole thing. Most of my patterns are 3/8 of an inch, 1 centimeter. Do a lot of clothing patterns, and so that works well for children's clothing. Adults usually do about 5/8 of an inch or a half an inch. For fitting, you've got a little bit extra room to take things out or pull them in with that extra seam allowance. But with Cuddle, we typically do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. But I've found at least with my machine, it goes through that seam with that 3/8 of an inch just fine. So like I said, I'm just putting that lining in the back. So everything's now sandwiched there. And I'm going to stitch over those same stitches we just did, but catching the lining this time. There we go. So again, just stitch in place. So it's a little bit thick here, but it's not terrible. It gets thicker later, so this part's not too bad. It gets a little hairy once we start putting all the pieces together, which is why Sheila did just the one layer. So she didn't bother with all the lining nonsense inside, the birthing it. She lined it and then just stitched it together. Oops, press this. Sorry, I lost the video. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our ring that's going to be the purse. See, I've got the zipper pull and it's fully enclosed there and there. So now I don't have to worry about accidentally pulling the pole off. So that works great. And then the inside has the lining and the gusset is all done. So now we're going to put the mains together and get that. That's where it starts to get a little tricky because of the thickness. Okay, so I have my main 2 pieces, this one and this one. And then they're going to get attached on the front and on the back. And if you had something that was stitched, you would just make sure you're going to put the front on the front and the back on the back. I don't have that worry today, but let's just go through it as if I did, really, let's say this one's definitely going to be the front. Remember, I wanted to open it this way, which means the front would be here. So this piece would be meeting up with this part here. The zippered edge is, there we go. The zippered edge of this loop is the top of the pattern. And remember, we had that notch. That notch is what's going to meet with the notch on the top of this piece. See that? I don't know if you can see that little Sharpie mark I made there. That's the top of this curve. That curve. So we're going to match that up, right sides together, like that. So the way this gets put together, we don't just go all the way around with the pins. And I'll show you when we get there at the bottom of the gusset, but because this shape is this arch with a flat bottom, and I like having that flat bottom of the bag, and this is a curved piece that's just like a flat gusset. We're going to stop when we get to these 2 corners down here and snip the upper fabric. So what I do is I pin a couple of pins here. I'm pinning just the main gusset to this main front, and the lining has been pulled out of the way. So just this one side of the main gusset. Now, in the previous step, we could have top stitched this down here. I didn't bother because it's not really important, and you wouldn't notice it in this fabric. If it was a cotton, you might want to make it look nice and do a top stitch there, but I did not bother with that here. So remember, we did not stitch all the way to the edge. So this part is free of the lining here. So this, where these two meet, it's hard to see, but where, use a stiletto, where this is the end of the zipper, this is where it's sewn together. So right where that is, will meet the line. There was a line marking of the pattern on the side. There is, on the pattern piece, there's a line and then there's a notch. This is going to meet up with the line marking. So I'm going to put a pin in there. Just kind of shove that in there. And it's tight. I'm going to leave this part open there. We'll deal with that later. And then I'm going to make sure the lining is out of the way and try to match up around this curve. Now this is all a bunch of floof and it's kind of thick and a little daunting, but trust me, it'll all be fine. Just want to make sure you don't catch the lining. And I'm not double pinning this either because there's not a lot of room for the double pins. So for this, I'm either using this kind of diagonal pin method or doing it sideways. On this other side, I'm going to take and line up that main with the other lining marking on the other side. It's right there. I can see that right there through the interfacing. So I'm going to pin that as well. And then pull this along. Just kind of pin all through here. Okay. Bunch of pins. And then I will, on this side, take this, it's been pulled away from the lining, but I will go down to this bottom edge. So in this, we pinned at this marking here. We've gone all the way up around the top through here, and we're going to pin all the way down to this corner. And you'll see when we get over and have stitched there, you'll see what we're doing. So when I'm at this corner, I'm putting one pin and I'm going to put it in diagonally at the corner. So the edge of the fabric is right there, and this pin is right at the diagonal here. So I'm going to stitch until the point where my stitching would hit this pin. I'm not going to let it hit the pin, but I'm going to stop it there. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a stopping point where I can clip to the stitching there and then turn this so we can stitch along this edge. So we'll see how that works when we get there. I'll show you how that's going to go. So we're going to start at where I started pinning, over at this spot here. And again, this is where having the zipper foot can come in handy again because this is tight here. That lining, there's a space there because we did not stitch it together, but that 3/8 of an inch is not super big. So it's not as much as you'd kind of like to have in terms of space there to get around that lining. So I'm pulling it back with my fingers here. And then I'm going to use the stiletto to just stitch on the main pieces. I'm not stitching on the lining at all at this point. So it's the main front and the main gusset. Okay. Stitch all that in place. All right. And then just kind of beat it all the way around. You make sure you're pulling that lining out of the way. I kind of check underneath and make sure that front is like nice and just straight down, flat. There's no puckering down there. If there ends up being a pucker or something, we can always come back and take that out and stitch again. Just a tight little space here. Oops. Okay, oops. This is where it's all getting caught. See, now we're at the side here where it's real snug because of that 3/8 of an inch mark there, but there is space for the machine to go by. That's why I like to keep the zipper foot on right there, because it can go right by. My walking foot is too wide and it would have gotten caught there. So I stitched down to, like I said, where that would hit that needle, that pin, and then I'm going to back stitch and I'll take it out. Clip, I'll show you. All right, so now we've stitched from this side here. We've stitched up and around the curve, and then we've made it past this here, and now we made it to this bottom corner there. I'm going to just double check on this side. So that's a little tight there, but it did catch, so I think it'll be okay. And we've gone along up there, little pucker there. We can see how that looks. We might want to take that out and redo that stitching down to there. So that looks okay. Let's look at this. So that catch. So there, it did catch. There's no holes. And it's within that seam allowance. That part just got tucked down in, but it's okay. So I'm not even going to bother undoing that stitch. Where was that? I can't even find the pucker, so it probably doesn't matter. Yeah, and again, there, that's probably where the pucker is, and I can't even see it. So I'm not going to bother with that either. That's the nice thing about Cuddle, is you can just kind of hide any little weird mistakes you make. If this was cotton, I would have undid those in a second, because I can't stand looking at errors when I'm using a product. But Cuddle, I'm just not even going to bother doing it. No one will ever know, and all it's going to do is make a mess if I try to do it now. Okay, so this is where we finished stitching. Remember, we had that pin at the 90 degrees. Now, if we look down here, this is where we're going to continue sewing, is down there. So I'm just going to, all I'm doing is clipping just the gusset. I'm not clipping the bottom at all. I'm just clipping the gusset, so now it can turn. So see, now we can, that's not going to make a fold there. That's going to make a box shape. So that'll stand up nice and straight at the bottom. This is now the bottom edge. So there is a bottom notch there, and there's a bottom notch here. So I'm going to match those up. This is now that bottom edge. I'm going to match that up. And then I'm going to pin back to this edge. Like this. To this edge. And then we will start stitching from those previous stitches, and we're going to go straight across. I'm going to continue going this way. All the way down to this other edge. And here we're going to do the same thing, where we put in a diagonal pin to where we should finish our stitches. So going right to that edge there. And from the point at a 90-degree angle right there, sorry, a 45-degree angle right there, we're going to stitch here, and that is where I'm going to stop my stitches. Okay. So I'm just going to start stitching where I stopped before. Get my stiletto. We're just going to stitch along the bottom. We're just keeping it at 3/8 of an inch. Seam allowance all the way down. Make this nice and straight and flat. And then again, I'm going to stop before I get to where it would have hit that pin. And here I'm going to show you, I'm just going to clip to the top stitching there, that stitching that I did, only clipping the gusset. And then this section here is just where we started. So those stitches, that's where we started right there. So I'm just going to pin this in place now. We're back where we started. The hardest part is keeping that lining out of the way during this point. All right. I like to kind of tuck these little fibers inside. It makes it easier to see the edge, but you can always fluff them up later with the stiletto if you want, so you don't have to do that. I just kind of like to. Sorry, my threads are getting caught on the foot. Restart, there we go. All right, and just like we did on the other end, we're gonna start stitching where we ended. Now we're just gonna take our stiletto and kind of meet the other edge there. Pins out. Right back to where we started. All right. Go. Drop my scissor. Okay. Just gonna clip the threads really quick. And then I'll show you from the front what it looks like. Okay. So now we've stitched the main front in place. And we've got all the way around. There's some little puckers here, but that one's actually outside the seam allowance. That's where I started and stopped, so that's fine. Or within the seam allowance, I should say. And you see here that that seam allowance got really big there and really big there. It's not going to matter with this fabric because it's all going to look fluffy and poofy in the end anyway. You could go back and fix those if you wanted to. So now I'm just kind of turning it right side out with my fingers. I'm just kind of pushing it. So now you can see this is the inside of the bag. And then that's the outside, that's the front. And we'd have the zipper opening and closing, and that's all good. Okay, now we're going to talk really quickly about the straps. So the straps get attached to the backing. Grab my webbing. All right, so as I mentioned before, with this strap, let me make sure the camera is focusing nicely. I like the strap to be adjustable and not to have anything hanging down later. I like it to just all be contained. And then you've got the buckle, you can take it on and off. So this is where I'm going to pull up my pattern again because I want to make sure that I am putting things on in the right order with the buckles. So we have our one long piece that we're going to use, and then we have one that's about 5 inches long. The 5 inches long one is going to go on, this is the buckle. And the 5 inches long one is going to be attached to this one. So right sides together, wrong sides together. You want to stitch this together. So I'm going to stitch a little like box as close as I can to this buckle. And that's where having the zipper foot kind of helps with that too. So I'm going to pin here just to kind of keep it in place. You don't want them to slide around too much, but I'm going to try to stitch as close as I can to that buckle. But it doesn't have to be right on top of it, but you don't want it to look nice. You can just do like a decorative box, or you can do a straight line across. It's really up to you. I like to do kind of the box thing. I'm gonna have to backstitch that. I don't think the box is gonna fit. I'll have to backstitch it down. So I'll backstitch down to make a box shape, and then stitch over. I still have it on a 4.0 stitch length, which is a little bit long to be doing this box, so I'll make it smaller for the next step, but it's fine. Okay, so, and you can go as crazy as you want with that part. Make it decorative if you want. It's just a strap. I'm not too worried about it, but you could make it a little fancier if you wanted to. Okay. So now we're back here, and this is going to be the right side of my buckle. Okay. The box just looks a little bit nicer there, and you can look at the buckle itself. Like some buckles, this one's the same on both sides, but some of them have like a little, they might have wording or something on one side. So you want the right side. I'm going to double check. I think it's facing up because it's the back. Yes. So this is the back piece. So you want this buckle to have the right side facing up, because once it's being worn and this is there, that is now going to be facing toward the front of the bag. So the right side will be shown. So the right side's facing up. Sorry, I'm going to clip that. That was driving me crazy sticking up like that. Okay. So now it's hard to see on here, but we're going to line it up with the notch that's on the back there. I'm actually going to put a pin there just so we can see it, because this is so fluffy you can't see it. So where this goes is, again, it's face up. You're going to do it. You want to be away from the seam allowance, but you want this edge to be caught in the seam allowance of the curve. So you need it to be where it's going to be caught both edges, and it's going to sew around the curve. And what it's going to do is, as it's sewn around the curve, this is then going to be angled out like that. So when you wear it, it's angled the correct direction. You don't want it just sticking out the side or sticking straight up. You kind of want it at this like angle so that it fits nicely when you wear it across the body. So I just eyeball this. This is, again, where that notch is. I try to make sure it's kind of like right within the seam allowance there and sticking up a little bit there. That's where having that 5 inches gives you some room to play with. And all I'm going to do is now pin this in place, and then I'm just going to baste it on. So then that's going to be, oops, wrong camera. That's going to be locked in place. So just baste it on within the seam allowance. Just make sure it's in place there. All those threads. And then you can see I caught the fabric there. So when this is worn, it'll kind of go up that way at the angle, and it'll be just right. So the trickier part is what we do with this longer piece. So we start off with this piece here, which is the slider. That's the word I couldn't remember before. So the slider. So we're going to go up and down through the slider. And these are 1 inch. You could use 2 inch for this project as well. It's just if you use 2 inches, you're going to want to make sure that your buckles and sliders are 2 inches too. I like the look of the 1 inch. I have made them with 2 inches before, but that's just personal preference. So we are going to stitch this together. Now this is going to be right side and right side. So it's wrong sides together right now. I'm going to stitch that down into place. I'm going to put the pin in on the end just to kind of hold it like I did before. And I'm just going to stitch that slider. Actually, I'm going to go back down to the smaller stitch length so it looks a little bit nicer. And then I will back stitch again because it doesn't quite give me room if I don't back stitch. And then make a box shape. Kind of go forward as far as I can. And you can do an X in the middle of the box if you want. Like I said, you can get as decorative as you'd like with it. It's all personal preference. That's what I always say, right? Okay. So now, just trimming the threads. All right, so now we've got our slider is attached to this long piece. This is long, so it's hard to show you on camera, but I'm trying to make sure it all stays the right direction. Because you want this buckle, yeah, that's the part that always confuses me, because you want it to aim this direction. So you've got this is technically right here the wrong side, because that was right side to right side. So the wrong side, now the wrong side of the buckle. So what's putting through here, like this is now the right side facing, if that makes sense. And it's really clear in the pattern, which is why I keep referring to it, but just wanted to show that to you guys. So that goes like this, and then this part I think then goes back through the slider. Yes, yes. I'm always like, what do I do with this end? But I forget that this end is going to be stitched inside the bag. I always think, this is the part where I question my instructions every time. So I'm like, this end is raw. What am I doing with this end? This end is going to be stitched to the bag. So now we've got the slider here. We've got the buckle here. And everything's on the right side of the webbing. Does that make sense? This now is going to need to be stitched to the back on the other side, just the same way we did with this one. Remember, this was right side facing up. We want this right side to be facing up too. And I'll put a pin where the notch is that I used to eyeball it. So again, we want it to be out of the way of the seam allowance here, but we want it to catch in the seam allowance up there. I'm going to pin that in place. And then I'm just going to baste that so we have it. All right. Place. Okay. I'm going to go over that one more time because I didn't quite hit the fabric above. I want to get, there we go. Just want to make sure it's in place when we go to put it, attach it to the bag, that it's not, doesn't do anything funny there, because in the next step, when we're actually attaching the back to the bag, we don't want anything that's going to give us any trouble. We're trying to minimize the effort. Okay, so now this is the back. As you wear it, it'll be pulled around. The buckle attached to the thing, and that'll be the right way. So I just always like to double check once I've got it to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So those are where they need to be. And really what you need to do now is just kind of forget about these and don't worry about them, because they just need to be kind of out of the way. Some people will pin them out of the way, or even use some clips or something, clip them out of the way. I'm not so worried about that I'm going to jump into that. Okay. So now what we're doing is we're going to attach this back here. So this is the main zipper gusset and gusset. That's that circle. And we're going to stitch them onto the front. So this is the same way, or the back. This is the same thing we did for the front. We're just going to now do to the back. The one thing we need to remember is to unzip part of the zipper gusset, because we're going to probably turn it through that, and I don't want to forget. You want to at least have a little bit of a hole there. So we're stitching them together here. So I'm going to pin this together. And then once we get past this step, you'll see the outside's done. So again, we're looking for that notch. The notch is here. The line is here. I made a little cut in the fabric so I would see it on this fluffy fabric. Matching that with where the zipper gusset met the regular gusset. And then I will pin it in place. I want to make sure that that strap, the webbing, gets stitched across fully. We don't want anything to be messed up with that. We want to make sure that's nice and snug because you're going to be tugging on that while you wear it. So we do want to just make sure that is how it needs to be. And then remember, we're going to pin out to this edge and stop it with the diagonal pin that we'll use to know where to stop the stitching so we can get around that bottom gusset. Okay. Go to this side. We're going to where we're starting on this side, which is that mark there. This is why you always make sure you do all your markings on the bags. And we're lining that up. And so we're just having to make sure that we're not catching those straps in anything. We're not catching the lining in anything. That makes a big difference, being able to feel with your fingers where things are as you're pinning to make sure you're not pinning any of those things in, except for the strapping there where you want to pin it in. It's the only place you want it, right? Okay. And then just like we did before, we're going to go to the machine and stitch this portion till we get to that diagonal pin. And there's still time to share if you have not shared yet and you want to enter the giveaway. You can also check out the Shannon Fabrics blog, which has all of the information. There's a post up about the bag. So it has all of the links and everything that you'll need. It's got some extra pictures. It has information about what fabrics we used. Any of that stuff is up on the blog for this specific live. So you can always check that out later. Okay. Almost through. Just making sure we're not catching the lining and that the backing is nice and flat. With those straps, just want to make sure the straps are getting stitched on nicely. I always stick my finger in this part, so not where the needle is, but like where that part is, and I'm always afraid it's going to catch my finger because it could catch it just as much as a needle, but it goes so fast. I'm trying to be real careful that I'm not catching anything in there. So when you see me dart my hand away really fast, I'm not anywhere near the needle, but I don't want to be caught by that going, the needle housing that's going up and down. Okay, so we're almost to that diagonal stitch right here. Take that down, and then back stitch. We'll come back over here. Okay, clip my thread. Go back to the beginning and clip the threads. My machine doesn't do a great job of cutting the threads, so I always clip them. So I feel like I'm clipping threads all day long. Okay, so now before I go on, I'm going to check this. And this is where things can get hairy, but actually it looks pretty good. This right there, there's a little bubble there that normally I would go back and fix, but we'll take a look and see what it looks like from the front. And normally the things that are causing the bubbles are the reason that you won't even see it. So yeah, can't even find where it is. So I'm not going to bother to take it out. But those straps in there nice and secure. That one's in there nice and securely. So I'm going to continue on and not worry about that. It doesn't look as pretty as it would if it were a cotton. It would have to be perfect if it was that. But with Cuddle, the inside doesn't have to look perfect. because the outside's going to look awesome, right? Super fun. So again, I'm just clipping the gusset. This is that flat bottom portion. Everything is tucked inside, but remember we left one of the zipper opening, so we can turn it out through the zipper. So when I do this project, I like to do the lining and then birth the lining. Call it birthing because it's like you do a outer just like this, and then you do an inner lining, and it's pretty much the same as what we just did. And then you leave an opening on the lining bottom edge. So you'll leave like a turning hole. And then when you're all done stitching on both sides all the way around, just like we have here, you then quote unquote birth the bag through the opening. And the whole thing comes right side together. And you would just, hand sew, or because it's Cuddle, you could just zigzag sew that lining bottom opening, and then nobody ever really sees that, so that's why I don't really bother to hand stitch most of the time. Okay, so I'm going over here to that corner. I'm going to put that diagonal pin. And then, yep, that'll fit nice. Okay, so I'm going to stitch straight across this bottom to that. Put that pin in one more time. I like to be nice and straight across. I can feel with my finger where that rectangle edge is. And then I do a diagonal there. You could certainly also just measure from where that edge is over 3/8 of an inch and draw a line or draw a marking. I just know that for this, it does not have to be exactly 3/8 of an inch to meet where it needs to meet. And so I don't bother to do that. I'm trying not to add any extra steps that I don't need. But if you're someone who feels more comfortable marking it instead of just leaving that diagonal pin, that is the option for you, is you would just make a little mark there on the gusset, so you know exactly where to stitch to. I just like the trick of that diagonal pin because I like skipping those extra steps if I don't have to do them. And I know I say it all the time, but because Cuddle is so forgiving, I don't really worry too much about it. Okay, so now is where I find my lining to pull back. Make sure those pieces are lined up nice. And then I'm stitching it all together right here. Lift this up to make it over there. It's a little tricky right here. Let's see how we did. Come back over here. Okay. All right, so that's the front. Here's the back. The main thing is you want to just make sure that you caught everything. There's nothing that you don't want any holes. You want to make sure there's no holes. If there's a little bit of puckers, this is that front that we already double checked, then I'm not too worried about if there's little puckers. Okay, so the live is getting a little bit long here, so I think we're going to be pretty close to done for what I'm going to show you today. But if you were going to add the lining, I'm going to skip that for today, but if you were doing it, all that you do for the lining is you're basically just putting a front here and a back here in the same way we just did that, but instead of stitching it to the main, you're stitching it to the lining. And then you'd be done. I like to do the zipper pocket that you can see here. So I'll probably add a zipper pocket to this one. And all that is, I'll just flip this wrong side out so you can see it. It is just the lining. The piece like this has a lower lining like that and an upper lining like this that a zipper goes between. So then you stitch this to the lower lining, and then you stitch it to the upper lining, and then those are stitched together, and then you just put them on top of that lining piece, and you would just baste all the way around the edge. So then when you unzip the zipper, you've got that nice cuddle backing too. So the whole thing is just nicely put together. And then you would treat this as if it was just a solid piece. So you don't have to add any of the pockets. I also offer a mesh pocket in the pattern like this, where you can do mesh, like, you know, just put little things inside there. With Cuddle, I prefer just having the zipper pockets. I think they're super handy. So I think even when I finish this one off, I might even do 2 zipper pockets in this one. It's nice to have a place to tuck things away. But let me show you what this looks like. You would just, the same way we just did, you would line up the top, go all the way around, line up this section too. There's a marking here where that line is. Go out to the bottom. And then, like I said, you would leave a big section in the middle for turning on the bottom. You go all the way around and you do both sides. And then you would birth the whole thing through that zipper hole and pop it all through. Now you can certainly clip the corners of this inside. I don't really bother because everything is so fluffy with Cuddle that it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I'm going to try to show you in here what this lining gusset would be doing. So if we had those pieces attached, that part would fill in that section and that part would fill in that section. But for now, I'm just going to call it good for this live because I don't want to keep you guys all day. And it's the same steps. There's no additional steps there. So I'm going to switch back to this camera. And if anyone has any questions, even about the part that I didn't do just now, happy to answer those. I just don't want to keep you guys super long. I remember with my coat live that I did, we were here for like hours and hours and hours. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So this is nicely adjustable, which is great. I'm going to make it way bigger so that I can. All right, so you've got, whoops, sorry, I keep forgetting about the microphone. Hopefully that wasn't too loud and annoying. So you would have this, the lining gives this a little bit of extra structure too. So I like having the lining inside. You don't have to have the lining. You could just serge all the inside. But you have your nice crossbody. You can pet it all day, which is what I basically do with mine. As you're seeing, none of the stitches are getting caught in there at all. I'm going to take it off so it doesn't hit my microphone so much. But yeah, I mean, that's the cute little bag. It's nice when you have, like what Sheila did for me with the lettering. You could actually put some extra stabilizer in, like a Decaville light or something, like backpack kind of structuring if you want it to be heftier. But I find once I've put the lining inside, because that has the SF101 on the back as well, that it gives it the structure that it doesn't get so floppy. See how this one doesn't have a lining in it yet either. So it's the same where it's just a little bit floppier than I would normally like for a structured bag. So you could put, if you were just going to do the one layer, you could put a thicker stabilizer or even like a fusible fleece, something like that in there that would give it some structure. I think later this summer, I may do a live with a backpack and show you what I do for that. Because with that, I do a bunch more stabilizers because I like it super hefty. But for this, it's just a fun little cute bag. And I don't want it to be too thick. I did get another fabric out that I was thinking about making one from that I wanted to show you guys. I think it would be so good for this pattern. It's the poppy, which I love. And so it's got, because it has this, like these mostly leaves, but this like botanical look to it, I think it would look so nice on the front of one of these bags. And you wouldn't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything additional. You don't have to do the embroidery. You don't have to do any quilting. Sheila Ryan did one as well that she did a bunch of quilting on that was gorgeous. I don't know, Adriana, if you have the picture of that, what it looked like when she quilted on that one. It was like the pink one. Oh yeah, so you can see the cute little quilting that she did on the outside edge before she made the bag. So she did it all on one piece like that and then did all the quilting and then went and made the bag from there. So you can see where she lined hers, but I think inside it's not, she skipped the step of doing the lining the way I just showed you, and she did them together as one piece and serged. So that's also, that's a perfectly fine way to do it, and it looks nice inside, and it's makes it a speedier project. So that's another option there. I thought that was really cute. Um, okay, well, I think unless we have any questions, we might be good for today. Don't forget to share. Oh, winners. I bet we have winners I could announce. I forgot about you guys. Let's see. Okay, so we've got Alicia Rose Profeta, Audrey Dupre, and Valerie Wise. So you'll just send an email to info@shannonfabrics.com, name, shipping address, I think. Oh yeah, and phone number. So you want to put the subject line live winner. And I'm really excited to see what fabrics you chose. I'm excited to see what you do with your Daybreak Belt Bag pattern. Feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions, especially on the parts that we didn't do of the pattern. But again, the images in the pattern, all the drawings and stuff are pretty clear, I think. Also, don't forget that just for watching the live today, you can use the code Shannon at checkout in my shop to get 20% off everything till the end of April. Always happy to do that for you guys. Shannon Fabrics community is so great. Oh, speaking of community, the I Love Facebook group, no, I Love Cuddle Facebook group is a great place to share all your makes over there. Everybody's super kind and answers questions right away. There's constantly questions coming up, and the whole community is great over there. So you're going to want to visit that if you haven't and you're on Facebook. But anyway, I think we're good for today. We'll see you guys next time.